Welcome to Talking in Stations, an EVE Online podcast. I am your host, Matterall. Today, we have a lot of FCs, so we'll be covering a lot of ground on what it is to fleet command other players. We'll also talk about the current news and the state of the map. First, I want to introduce Carneros.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Morning, Carneros. And I would also like to introduce Elise Randolph.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. These two guys are obviously our staff and super capable of bringing out parts of the discussion that you guys want to hear about. So we're glad to have them. Super experienced players. But our guests today, we're going to get to them now. We'll introduce in order Killaby.
Hello, guys.
Killaby is an FC for Northern Coalition. And from the north as well, from Horde, we have Alpha Star Pilot.
Hello.
Hello. I've heard you're very young, but you have a very deep voice, so I assume you grew up.
Yeah, I'm 21, so I was very young.
Not that young.
A while ago.
No, I heard that Alpha Star Pilot started EVE when he was like 13. We'll talk about you in
11,
a second.
but yeah.
11. Oh, all right. Also with us today is Dunk Dinkle.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Dunk. And we have Jay Amazingness from the Goon Swarm.
Hello.
Hey, Jay. And finally, we have Progod Legend. How you doing, Progod, from Test?
Pretty good. What's up?
All right. Thanks for showing up. We might actually have Pando from Initiative if he shows up later in the show, but he was busy killing Killabee's NC Rorquals just a few minutes ago. We'll talk about that in just a minute. All right. Before we start, though, Alpha Star Pilot, you're new to the program. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I started playing EVE in summer of 2009. Bounced around a lot. The last decade of the game took about a year and a half off due to a transition in life called starting college. Resubbed. I was in PL and then went back to Horde because I was in Horde originally when it started, then took a year and a half off for IRL and then came back, and I've been in Horde ever since my resub, which was, I believe, a little over a year ago, last September, October, something like that. And yeah, I just FC a lot, try and get some fights and have fun. That's about it.
When did you start FCing?
2011, 2010. I guess my breakout was Delve Thunderdome, Brick Squad, Morses Mihi versus the World. If anyone here remembers that.
Oh, yeah.
I was in Brick Squad.
I remember that.
Yeah. Progod was leading the Nully efforts there.
Ah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was probably some of the most fun I've had in EVE Online.
Yeah, I agree.
Same.
That was just good fucking times.
Well, cool, Alpha Star. And so how old were you when you started FCing?
12, 13.
And that's...
There's some videos on YouTube of me like killing test Drake fleets with Brick Squad RD Canes, and I had a very high-pitched voice from like 2010, 2011.
That is hilarious. I'm going to have to go and listen to those. And the reason I bring it up is because MMOs are maybe one of the few spaces where children can tell adults what to do, and the adults have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about like the personalities, so it's kind of the people you interact with.
Right. All right, cool. So let's get to the news. And it's nice to meet you, by the way, Alpha Star, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.
Okay, so we got a lot to cover because there's a lot of different things that are either smoldering because they've already happened, as in Test versus Horde in the North and Tribute, or they're smoldering because there's a fire that's going to start, like Tenerifis. Today there's going to be a bigger fight in a few hours, I believe, on the board of Tenerifis and Detroit. Maybe. We'll see who shows up. I guess we'll start with... where were we going to start?
Just a cornucopia of FCs.
I
Can't even
know.
decide.
Can I tell my dad joke now?
Well, all right. We'll let you slip
What
in the
did we
joke.
cover last time? Let's like, what was the latest geopolitical news you covered on the last show?
Well, it was Tess. But first, I want to hear Dunk's father joke, and then we'll get moving.
Father joke.
All right, be ready. So today's the Super Bowl in America. And for all of you betting people, I'm going to tell you the score of the game right now so you can place your bets. Are you ready? All right. It's going to be Los Angeles Rams 27, Maroon 5.
Oh my God. God damn it.
Nice.
Yikes.
Yeah, see, I don't know, man.
I didn't get
It
it.
makes me cringe a bit, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
Like,
good. That's how you know it's good. That's how you know it's right.
All right, I'll pick it up
Ladies
from
and
there.
gentlemen. Yeah, thank you.
Is it sad I didn't get that
I cracked
joke?
myself up.
I'll come back to it.
It is sad you don't get the joke.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with the
Playing too much
freshest.
Eve.
Yeah, let's start with the freshest news. Something that just happened a minute ago. Killer B, what happened when Initiative attacked NC. just now?
I mean, I was like, so I was AFK, and then I came back and I saw lots of pings for subcaps. So I hopped on comms. Basically, 4 or 5 of our oracles were tackled, spread over a couple belts in the same system, and it was only like a couple in it sabers that I got reported. But then I checked some sources, and I noticed that they had a Stuka fleet formed up. So I knew they were probably going to come through a wormhole, and they did pretty much that second. They had a pretty big Stuka fleet, like 200 dudes. I started working on those Rorquals. They managed to get a Sino in up before the Rorquals got their Sino up. The usual bad Rorqual pilot mistakes. All the FCs are familiar with them.
Oh,
Can
maybe
you
but
explain the
then-
Stuka? Explain the Stuka fleet for the listeners.
I'm just going to call it Bush bombers then. Basically, the Stuka fleet can be made of lots of ships, but the core of the doctrine are command destroyers with the micro jump field generator and bombers for DPS. And then Test calls it Gokus, and they like to mix in harpies. In its fleet, they just had Kikimoras in it, which was awesome to see because I love the trick ships. So it kind of, you can sort of support the core of the doctrine with whatever you like most, but it kind of, the core of the doctrine are command destroyers and bombers for DPS, yeah, and then a couple of T1 or T2 Logifrics. But yeah, they basically, our subcap FC decided to form Munins. He was a bit uncareful, warped in very closely onto the bombers, and obviously they just all launched bombs in his direction, and then most of his fleet died. I at that point I started admitting our supers, and I just sort of dropped supers, and I managed to save one of the Rorquals. All the others had already died or were out of range. So yeah, that happened. It wasn't that exciting. It looks pretty fancy on the battle report because we got shit on. Sorry for the profanity there, but yeah, it was just a chain of unfortunate events, I guess. And apparently, they just killed the Knicks from Fraternity. They're having a good fleet for sure.
I hope they're using the
Sometimes
drifter
when you
holes.
rage roll, you get some really good outcomes.
Yeah, and they form. At this, I want to say this. I've watched Init form ups very closely over the last couple of weeks because Init are sort of similar size to NC. So I've kind of been comparing what they form, what we form, yada yada. And they've been doing incredibly well lately. They have initiative mercenaries, which make up a huge chunk of their numbers these days as well. But yeah, Init is doing really well generally.
So to get that straight, Init destroyed some Rorquals in the
4
north.
Rorquals, yes.
And they also picked off a Nyx in the south?
I don't know, somewhere in fraternity space. Let's see. The Zekiel was linked in Twitch chat.
Using those
Yeah, in
drifter-
Detroit. So
Wow. So they're all over the place right now.
Man, I
That's
did that
fast.
for like 2 weeks where I just went through those wormholes with Goku Fleet, and I only found oracles a couple times. I'm super jealous.
It's tricky. You gotta blue scout a little bit with like
Yeah. See, that's a lot.
unsavory
of effort.
means, and then you can go through and grab someone. That's what I learned as well, because I've been trying to do it as well. I've just been finding a bunch of Vector Navy issues that mysteriously, as soon as I show up on grid, log off. But apparently, if you blue scout it, then that's the way.
Right. So, what has been happening in the North in general? Maybe Alpha Star, you can take us through what Horde's been up to. And just to preface this, there in the recent past has been an assault that was primarily from Test Alliance, Progod's group, and that was repelled, I guess. And I think Progod, you guys have retreated. Is that the right way to say it?
No. They rotated south.
Rotated.
Another synonym is pivot.
Yeah, you guys just pivoted into a new strategy.
So like
Adjusted their angular direction
our
of
pivot foot. No, this is real easy. Like our pivot foot is in perimeter.
They
and then we had a
expanded away.
foot in Oijanen with the ball up and shooting position. Now we just took the ball down. Right foot's back and catch.
Yeah.
Pivot foot's still in perimeter.
Still a triple
Can you write
threat.
this out for me on a Microsoft Surface?
I was gonna act it out on stream, but I didn't do it.
Alpha Star, what's your take on all this?
So I'll try and keep it short and sweet. Test took over the Highsec market, which is making money off taxes in perimeter, off of like plexes and other stuff. And one part of the campaign was fighting them in Highsec, which you could see recently has produced a lot of interesting large subcap fights, aka the Great Ferox Massacre of 2019. And on top of that, they deployed a force to Oijanen, and goons deployed different groups near Geminate as well. And initially, it started off with some structures getting hit in Geminate, then it turned to Kalevala, which was our Renta region, getting toasted a lot. So I deployed a Horde SIG there to try and counter Entosis. So it's been pretty back and forth there recently. And then it seems like a new turn of events is happening in the south. So Test is going to work with Legacy to fight dudes in the south, and they switched their staging out of Oijanen to focus more on other fronts. And
I would have gone home anyway.
Yeah, and there was that big dread bomb in L4X, which was very interesting. I slept through it because I can't be bothered waking up at ungodly hours in the day to play a video game when I'm a college student. So, but I heard it was a very interesting turn of events, and lots of dreads died, and definitely helped the morale on our side. So right now, I guess the only front that's kind of remaining in the north is the Highsec campaign, which is just fighting over Market Asbels, the Keepstar, just shooting each other with Feroxes for 4 hours straight. And it's about a quick summary of it.
Yeah,
It's not bad.
well, those Ferox fights are usually in Highsec, and we've seen some long fights in Highsec. Are these the biggest fights that we've seen in Highsec?
That's a good question, but probably at least in my memory, yes. In my memory, I would say yes, that there hasn't been like large scale engagement on that scale in Highsec. Maybe in the RVB days back in the day, but I don't know.
No, IVB never really had that huge of a following. There have been some like in-game events, like with the Titan and stuff in Luminaire, that garnered like a few thousand people as well. But in terms of like two player groups fighting, I think this is the biggest it's been in Highsec.
I don't know, man. Some of those fights between 101st Space Marine Force and Repo Empire used to get pretty big back.
Oh yeah, I'm sure those were crackers, as the kids call them.
But there was, I think, on record, there was a bigger brawl between Goon Swarm and Horde when Goon Swarm was coming down from the Hakonin deployment. That was about 2 years ago. At least the damage was greater, but I don't know if the numbers were as great as what we're seeing now. Jay, do you remember that deployment?
Yeah, are you talking about the Nalvula dread bomb, or?
I think when you guys were turned back from attacking the north and you took out Horde on the way back south, if that makes sense.
I don't remember that. It must have been like an AU time zone thing. and they just got bored and just started hitting stuff in Highsec.
Yeah, it might have been. I don't have the stats on it, but I think it was it was Stedio from Horde, I think, that talked me through that. Or actually, it might have been Seth from the Scourge, who's been on the show lately. Interesting one if you haven't seen that episode. He's a Russian guy from the Scourge. Anyway, Jay, I wanted to include you into this. What is the role of the Imperium these days in what's been going on, if any?
So after X47, we have a lot of people that wanted to get into Titans. So currently that's what we're doing back in Delve. We're getting a lot of new people into Titans. They're cheaper than ever. They're like 40 bill now. So a lot of new people are getting into Titans. And we have our citizen squads. We have like an EU time zone squad in, I think it's Hakonnen. And then
Yes.
we have a couple of US time zone squads around Germany and Kavala. The EU time zone one is focusing on like NC dot stuff and tribute. We've got a couple good fights over, and I think the US time zone are fighting in Kavala with the Horde group. I don't know what they're called. The good Horde group that lives there.
Alpha Star, what's that Horde group called?
Yeah, so it's an open deployment sig called Partisans. So basically,
Yeah, that's it.
Long story short, when goons deployed to 6RCQ to attack Fade and Declan, kind of realized like we were just starting to settle in Gemini, and then it didn't seem right to have a full alliance deployment. So I just told Goblins like, hey, like I'm down to help our friends. How about we just make like an open group for everyone that just wants to prioritize like PvPing and deploy to the war zone. So that's how it started, and
Yeah,
kind of
I have
how
a
it's
question
continued.
about that. Why didn't Horde do a full alliance deployment to fight goons in Fade and Pure Black?
I mean, like technically, like everyone who like actively participates in fleets in Pandemic Horde did deploy to Fade. The whole point of not doing like an announcement of the whole alliance is moving is so that the new beans, the new players who don't know what's going on and just need to like spend a few weeks going through our like programs to like understand the game, don't get thrown into the meat grinder right away. So that's why we made Partisans, so that people who are understanding of how the game works, what's going on geopolitically, and can fleet up and participate, joined my SIG, and we went out there. And a lot of the people who were still setting up our infrastructure and working with the new players, like we have special programs that take care of our new players and help them understand PvE, PvP, simple mechanics, stayed back to continue the training. And then those people, once they figured out how the basics work, would figure out that Partisans is a thing and come join us too and bring any War Frigate or something.
Fair enough.
All right. So those are the Partisans that were there. Jade, did you finish what you were saying?
Yeah, I finished what I was saying.
I want to give a shout out here at this point because you mentioned the UTZ SIG of goons that are deployed to Hakonnen, and that's Space Violence. They're being led by Kendar. And I think Whelp Squad is also in Hakonnen at this point. And yeah, we've had some really, really good brawls over some structures in low sec around Hakonnen, like Navula, Tazy, Hakonnen itself. There were a couple Astras of NC Dot, right, Taurus and stuff that they reinforced. And we've had some really nice brawls over those. There was no, for the most part, sometimes there were some miscommunications that resolved in some bad phoning happening. But whenever Kendar and me both saw, okay, Kendar is only forming SV, and he saw, okay, Killer is only forming NC Dot, we've had some really nice and pretty even, for the most part, fights with each other. They were really, really fun, and also helped me get back into the game.
That's right. Welcome back. Now, is that something that experienced FCs do? Is they don't panic and call everybody to help them and over compensate for what their enemy has brought? Is that something that experienced FCs do? Is they kind of keep the fight doable for both sides so that both continue to engage?
Some, yeah. So there's some that do, but some that don't want to. Yeah, exactly. Like we have another FC that's sort of the my partner in EOTZ who's called Nidaspar or Ajax, whatever name you know him under, and he has a very clear sort of Guru Goons attitude where he does not give them any good fights at all. So whenever he forms up, he just does whatever is necessary to win the fight. He doesn't particularly care about getting a good fight. Whereas when I form myself, Kendar sees, okay, Killer is forming. I told Kendar when he deployed to the, we don't talk a lot, yeah, but when Kendar deployed to a Kona with us, I told him, hey dude, whenever you see me pinging for a fleet, you can assume you're going to get a good fight. And he basically believes in what I told him, and so far I've been able to uphold my word.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just had some good fights. Again, that's fun.
I think you just coined a new phrase, uphold my world. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So it depends on the FC. It's not a matter of experience. It just depends on what your motivation is to fight.
I think that was the same group. The Space Violence group was the same group that did the Dread Bomb that didn't go well for our side. I think it was there. He's talking about working with Kendar and Space Violence, and I think that was the Dread Bomb that didn't work.
But Space Violence did have some success in the Expanse, right? The Kavala Expanse. They were the ones that kind of have. And when Alpha Star was describing it, he called it toasting, but they were basically taking over the Sov with Entosis.
No,
I think that was the US time zone groups.
That was our US time zone squad.
It's Liberty Squad. Goon's new US time zone sig that like Thomas Lear runs, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've been having a lot of success over there.
Right. So they're the ones that took over the Kavala, and now you're contesting it back, Alpha Star. Is that right?
I mean, I wouldn't say they've taken it over. They killed a bunch of iHubs, and we are taking some back, and then they kill some more, and then we're taking some back, and then they reinforce some structures, and we form battleships and caps, and they either don't fight us or they bring fleets from. And now ELO shows up as the third party and just shoots everyone. So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, it's very focused on US time zone when it comes to content.
So I know that was a profit center for you, and you've gotten now perimeter taken away, and that was a profit center as well, as you were taking in the tax money from offshoring accounts. You had the Expanse, and that was kind of a renter or mining area. How is Horde surviving monetarily?
To be honest, I don't know the details of our alliance income making because I just FC and I don't really do anything back there. But when it comes to the members, we have a lot of things set up so that members who understand the abilities to diversify their methods of making ISK, we provide them with that ability. And yeah, like right now, like as an FC, like when I form Stratops, they get SRP'd. And when, that's still not a problem when it comes to like important fleets. So I have not heard anything about us having any money issues right now. And like I said, I honestly have no idea like what our financial systems are in the back end. So I try to
still make
focus.
a lot of money off of Radar taxes because you've got most of your pilots focused in 3 corps that the Alliance controls, so that's pretty easy to tax.
Yeah, like we have that obviously, but when it comes to other things, I don't really know. But judging by the fact that I haven't been told like not being able to SRP Stratops, I'm sure it's fine right now.
Well, y'all also have a lot of money saved up from years of making a shit ton of money, so I'm sure you'll be fine.
We got.
I thought Goblins SRP'd all of that, or RMT'd it rather.
I don't know. That's I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, let's not start rumors. I mean,
I wasn't the one that started that rumor.
He definitely didn't. Like, as much as a lot of people like to formulate their opinions about him, like I met him in real life, like he's not the kind of guy that would do that. Like he's very like he focuses his heart and soul into Horde, and I can't see him being the kind of person that would RMT it away. And like he has a very successful career IRL, so I don't know why he'd need to make money like that. So
He's a very jolly Italian.
I don't think anyone seriously believes the RMTs as ISK. Who does that anymore?
Yeah, leave goblins alone.
Okay, so all right, so basically you're an FC. You don't care where the money comes from, but the money is still coming to replace the fleets that you.
I mean, of course, I care where the money comes from, but like I said, there hasn't been any problems that I've been aware of when it comes to supporting our ship replacement or whatever other things that require a lot of money. Obviously, like losing the Highsec market, losing the renders in Kalevala hurt us. I'm not saying it didn't, but it's not like some death blow, and all of the people tooting horns of like us having no ISK left is definitely incorrect. You can come to Geminate with a fleet and we'll form hacks or whatever 150 battleships, and you wouldn't be able to form that if you weren't able to SRP that in this day and age.
Okay.
So
all right, so as far as you know, there's no problem financially. You guys are doing good.
yeah.
All right.
I think in the current state of EVE, it does seem like there are very few groups that run into financial hardship.
Wasn't that a strategy at one time to bankrupt or to make it so painful for people?
Well, that strategy is dead, my friend, because we live in a way different EVE now. Every major alliance has almost unlimited amounts of resources, at least in terms of money. It's a lot harder to get access to stuff like the actual minerals or moon products, for example, or PI salvage. So those are the bottlenecks, but money, at least for the major alliances, is not going to be a bottleneck for, well, probably for a long time.
You all agree with that?
I mean, we could theoretically spend most of our money. Like if we... It is technically possible to field a large enough dread bomb to beat a super fleet. I'm just not sure if you want to spend the trillions that it takes to do it.
I could probably quite easily spend all the money the Goons have on some things.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that like it's almost like in real life where someone says, "Oh, you can almost be too rich," and I'm like, "No, I don't care how rich I am. I could find a way to spend the money."
You get more expensive tastes.
Yeah.
To me, it goes back to what Killer B's saying, though, about the bottlenecks. PI, for example, if you want to build Tech 2 structure rigs, you could blow all of their money that you saved up trying to buy these rare bottleneck things off the market.
Now, that is interesting. When we lost to Tatara and Highsec because of that fuck up, we actually could not rebuild the T2 rig for it for like 2 weeks just because there was not enough PI in the entire game available for sale.
It's not PI you need, it's salvage you need.
Oh, salvage. That was salvage, right, for the rig.
That's why my sign, wherever it is over my shoulder, says contaminated Lorentz fluid, the price is too high. That's why we need T2 salvage drones. It's salvage that's a huge bottleneck to the rigs and the quantities you need for structures.
Salvage too. PI a lot. I mean, Tess has a pretty sophisticated PI program, but I think we could still only build one keepstar a month.
There used to be a group in Highsec. There used to be a group in Highsec that did nothing but salvage. They would put together mission runners and people, new players that could just salvage, and they would put those two groups together, and they would take a little cut of the profits or whatever. But
it's just
imagine if we actually took all the time to salvage the battles in Highsec.
The quantities of salvage you need for some of the larger rigs are so immense, you can literally buy out all of Jita, and you still don't have enough materials. So you have to go on like week-long campaigns. Yeah, and
it's more expensive for Keepstar rigs than it is for Keepstar.
Say that again, Jay.
It's more expensive for the Keepstar rigs than it is for the whole. Like if you use like the decent rigs, not T2 rigs, even T1 rigs, it's like 130, 140 bill for that rig.
Well, so there's still things for alliances to spend money on if they really want to spend money. Go ahead, Lise.
I was going to say there are a few groups who are when needing to source those things, they just buy some ships that are kind of like undervalued a little bit in Jita and just kill them all and salvage the wreckage.
Oh, create your own wreckage. Interesting.
Yeah. That's
if you insure the ships as well.
That is interesting. If you insure it, then...
The cost point works pretty well.
I had a dude in my old corp once in Cataclysm Enterprise. The way he made money is he had a spreadsheet set up, would basically tell him which mods he would make money on by buying them up in Jita and just selling them. So all he did to make money, and he made really good money with it actually, was buy mods that his spreadsheet told him to buy, and then he literally just what is it called? Like salvaged them, or reprocessed them, right? And then he sold what he got out of the reprocessing, and he made money with that. But I don't know if that's still possible after they nerfed reprocessing at some point, I think, in the past, where you now get more of these metal scraps or some shit that aren't worth anything. So yeah, some weird ways you can make money.
I mean, the quantities involved are just insane. I mean, like for the extinction rig, just the T1 extinction rig for a keepstar, you need 8 different salvage materials, each of them, like best case, 80,000 units of those. It just doesn't exist in the game. You have to buy it over time. It's such a bottleneck in some of these larger structures. And blowing up ships and salvaging them, you could do that for years and not catch up to what you need for one keepstar rig.
So let's go back to perimeter that was taken over from Horde. You guys Progod held for
I can't
October,
understand
right?
what you're saying, man.
Yeah, your mic's giving us a little trouble there.
Oops.
We wanted to talk about the perimeter keepstar for a second, and what's going on over that. Is it still being contested? We do know that the Imperium just sent a group up there as well. So in yesterday's fireside, the Imperium sent the Suddenly Seaman folks up to that thing. Jay, can you explain any of that?
Yeah, so it's actually an idea I stole from NC Dot like 2 years ago, because I noticed they had a corp join NC Dot. And I sort of keep an eye on what corps join what alliances, and I noticed this corp, like it was like a random corp, like it wasn't like an obvious logistics corp. It wasn't a like a new member corp or anything, and then its membership grew from like 20 people up to like 300 over time, and eventually I worked out that it was alpha clones. So NC would deploy somewhere, and they would obviously not want to jump clone back if something happened to their Sov in Tribute or Tenal or whatever, so just have alpha clones in Feroxes to defend their space. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea, I must steal that. So for the last couple of months, we've been telling our people to train these alpha clone Feroxes. I made a corp called Suddenly Seaman, which we used for the Burn Jita characters. We've got like 1,500 people in there now, and yesterday we deployed them to Perimeter. So it's kind of a long trip to go from Delve to Jita all the time for these fights. So we're just exclusively using our alpha characters there for these Perimeter fights.
And it's a great name too for your corp.
Yeah,
because they
Sort
come
of
out
a
of nowhere.
signature Goonswarm, name.
I thought it was a bit crass for Goonswarm. Did you name it, Jay?
Yeah, I made it. It was actually
okay.
so when
Well,
we
that
was
makes more
making
sense.
it. When we was making it, I was talking to Asher with a name because he wanted a fun name for it. So he was like, because this was around the time of what was that group called Care for Kids, the charity thing, where they like that was all the drama around that came out, where like they were claiming to be a charity or whatever, but they were actually like botting supers up in the drone lands for the kids or whatever. So it's kind of a play on that. That's why it's a naval charity.
Yeah, that was something that I don't think we got to the bottom of. I think there was something going on with Care for Kids, but it might have been not as devious as it was made to sound by the Imperium, who was an enemy of Care for Kids in general, because Care for Kids was a part of basically PL and the organization that Lenny had put together, and Lenny and PL and everybody else were part of the groups that had displaced an Imperium up north. No love lost between them, but we don't know what the Care for Kids thing was if it was an actual charity or if it was some kind of a front. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, now that I can speak, perimeter. Is that I've heard that the tax rate is going to drop from 0.3 to 0.1 if it hasn't already on that keepstar that you have there, Progod.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
I mean, we're up against a group of people who are pretty motivated right now, and unfortunately, the North is very close to Jita, so we've killed. I don't even know how many Asbels. Quite a lot. We've killed at least 40 or 50. But they are able to set the tax at 1% and make at least the cost of the Asbel back before we could kill it. And then the fact that Horde and NC Dot can form up and come down means it will probably always be defending there, even if we decide to go do other things like fight in the East, like we might end up doing if Fraternity and Skill U and Scourge invade. So in an effort to kind of, take some of the market back and just make it easier on our guys in the North, we probably are going to set the tax to 0.1% in March. We're still going to be killing Asbels and we're still going to be fighting there, but it might make it easier for the short term. And it's not permanent. We'll probably do it for like 3 months, 3 to 6 months around there and see how it goes. But it definitely will help stymie some of the market competition up there. They were trying to set it to 0% for a little while, but we killed the Asbels too quickly for that. But at 0.1% and the amount of people, it's just they've got a pattern going where the people who are selling at 0.1% always know there will be a new Asbel up before the next one dies. And it's so hard. You can't get control of the Plex market. You can get control of the other markets, but the Plexes, because you could throw them in a Plex vault and move them to a new station without actually having to move the Plex, it's too safe to transfer. It's too easy to transfer Plex from station to station. So they'll always go to the cheapest station. It's not profitable to keep throwing Asbels down at 0% tax, but at 0.1% tax, it is still slightly profitable. Although clearly not as profitable as if you just hold a station and it doesn't die.
So this is the I Choose You guy that was there before. You displaced him, and in retaliation, he's plopping down structures to compete with yours financially, and he's able to break even at 0.1 tax. You guys are at 0.3 tax, but at 0 tax, basically no fees at all.
Yeah, the amount of Plex you would have to sell to cover 5.5 billion ISK in 2 days and in tax savings, because you're not paying that 0.3% tax, is pretty substantial.
But he also has deep pockets, so even if he runs,
sure, I mean, he can afford to keep doing it. I mean, there's a reason he's doing it. You in situations like this, you keep the pressure up on people, and the pressure up on us. Although we've got a Highsec sig now that handles reinforcements. It's actually really nice that we get to fight in Highsec because, especially when we've had a super blob sitting on our face for a couple months. So the fights in Highsec and the fights in Low-Sec have sustained us on content without having to fight a fucking super blob with possible bubbles trapping your fleet. So it's been pretty nice to have Highsec there. But as we start to shift to other things, having to make sure that we keep constantly killing those Asbels when all NC Dot and Horde have to do is send a ping and travel 10 jumps would make it difficult. I mean, it could have been kept at 0.3%, but this will make it easier on the FCs. And we'll just see how it goes for a couple months. We can always throw it back up to 0.3%. We said we'd never raise it above 0.3%, but we did say we could do some tax holidays. So just call it an extended tax holiday.
Caleb, have you been involved in the perimeter fights?
Yeah, recently I was actually not a big fan of it at all at the start, but then I did one, and it was really fun. And then I did more.
Yeah, a couple of wins will do that.
They're great because there's no caps, there's no bombs, there's no nothing, right? There's it's kind of when you fly Feroxes in 0-0, for example, and there's any kind of bombers on grid, you have to be pretty careful unless you have a huge Jackdaw fleet helping you out. And then it's just nice because you can completely forget about anything like that. You can forget about caps. You can forget about any possible escalation on that level. And you can completely forget about AoE damage in any way in Highsec. And you can just brawl it out. And they're pretty fun. There were a couple of those brawls were really, really fun.
And if things go really poorly, you can just warp
out. Yeah. And there's some nice shenanigans you can do in Highsec. So what we've been doing is obviously using neutral links. because apparently you don't get suspect or anything if you use your command burst inside a fleet. So you can provide your entire fleet with all the boosts from all the link ships without getting any sort of aggression. They're completely invulnerable, basically. And we've been using neutral anchors, of course. So basically our subcap anchor is usually a neutral character as well. And then you can do fun stuff like we did bump Progod a bit on the undock of their Sotio that you use with neutral Macarials, because there's nothing you can do to those Macarials. And then we've also been ramming neutral Macarials into the fleets, just make everybody spread out, yada yada. And it's very it's just very good.
It's funny. So nullsec, I've heard Boat say, I'm terrified of fighting in Highsec. And that's funny because he's such an experienced nullsec pilot and FC. Is it totally different fighting in Highsec from nullsec?
Yeah, especially with the Ferox being so cost efficient and able to reach out to the ranges that it is with the DPS and EHP that it has. Most fleets go no prop mod, or you should go no prop mod. Sometimes MWD helps, but that extra tank, like there's no bubbles, so you'll always be able to warp out. You can always reposition. Most of the fights have happened with both fleets just sitting at 0 kilometers on each other. So it's definitely a different game. It's fun for a little bit. I think if we keep doing it over a couple of weeks, once we kind of figure out the Highsec meta, and I think both sides have kind of adjusted, it'll get pretty repetitive. There's only like 0 kilometer fights are fun, but yeah.
I'm already starting to get bored of it. It's a night, like, it wouldn't be something I wanted to do every day, all day, and only day. It's nice every now and then, but I wouldn't want to do it like a whole lot, because
the mechanics can get a little bit convoluted as well, especially if you're used to seeing like coalition fleets and stuff like that. Because if there are two groups that are at war with one another, or if there are two groups that are at war, regardless of with whom, and you rep someone who's at war, you become a suspect. So anyone in the entire cluster can shoot you.
Oh, that's my favorite part about those fights is really hard. All those fucking neutrals that just show up.
Yeah. So someone can just show up in a tornado or something and just and if you just rep the wrong guy, then half your logistics start dying.
That's what I do. I let our other FCs kind of step up and get some experience with the coordinating and all the work, and I just bring in RD NATO and kill test pods at range during those fights. So I've been doing the last couple times.
Oh yeah, no, it's great for younger FCs because there's really not much to it, and you just warp at 0.
It's mostly Arky doing it for Horde, and he's been doing a good job. So yeah.
Yes, Horde, the North's favorite Spaniard.
Is he Spanish? I thought he was French.
No, he's Spanish.
Don't tell him I said that.
Well, probably heard you, but it's okay. He'll forgive you.
So going back to perimeter, the idea is that you're going to go down to 0.1 tax Progod, and that makes it nearly impossible for them to make a profit. So at least they'll go into the red, and then you're going to continue to defend. Somebody in, I think it was Doc10011 in chat wanted to know, are you going to let that keepstar ever fall?
I don't think so. I mean, even with the success that they had for a couple of weeks there, they still never seriously contested the keepstar. It's so much more difficult to deal with. Like, it has a 75,000 DPS cap with 20% resistance. So, 75,000 probably becomes 92.5, I think. But, like, the problem is... actually 90, whatever. The problem is that, like, when you have to do that damn DPS cap, and you can only bring subcaps, that means you have to commit pretty much an entire subcap fleet to just shooting the keepstar. But the defenders don't, clearly, because they're defending their keepstar. So all the subcap fleets the defenders do are just fighting you. And there's no bubbles, so you can't really kite them that hard. Now, you could put drones on it. You could do a lot of different things. You can try and win the fight while just keeping it paused, which you only have to do 7,500 DPS. But, if you're not actually making progress on the keepstar and both sides are constantly replenishing out of a cache, you're not really making any progress. So there is a way you could do it. I mean, if you just are willing to sacrifice thousands and thousands of ships to RF the keepstar and put it in armor, you could pull it off, but I don't know what that limit is, and I don't think anyone knows what that upper limit is, and it'd take a pretty substantial effort to try.
To put it into armor.
No, they've reinforced it a couple times, but to actually fight through the armor timer, because it's got 3 plates on it, so it's pretty substantial.
So it's easy enough to harass you guys by taking out the shield timer, but going through armor is going to be a whole different thing.
Well, even the shield timer is tough, man. They've got this Leshak fleet that they warp in about 3 or 4 times a day to try and RF it. It's like 20 or 25 Leshaks, which can actually DPS cap the keepstar. It's pretty cool. With Nesterlogy and stuff like that. But the last night, Villy and I were killing them with just my tackle ship and the keepstar guns. Like it's tough to deal with. That keepstar can do a substantial amount of damage just defending itself.
Oh, that's cool. I was wondering if those Leshaks are going to be used to take out structures, and we're seeing that. All right, so you're basically saying you're gonna defend that keepstar actively. You're not gonna let it ever get taken.
Well, yeah, we basically just shifted everything we had in Oisian into perimeter. So like perimeter is our new northern staging. As Horde have shown, it's not really hard to burn from Oisian into perimeter, so we could still do Oisian and stuff even if we wanted to. But test runs 3, sometimes 4 different stagings. We're just making perimeter our new northern staging.
All right, cool. Okay, so I also want to say, you guys are all over the place, Progod. You're busy in the north, you're busy in Highsec, and now you're also busy in the south as you pivot, the triple threat pivot down to what looks like, Tenerife's, right? Like it looks like there's a fight later today in 46 DP.
Yeah, Skill U and Scourge deployed to Fraternity Space to shoot XIX and Legacy and pretty much anyone in the area. And, as long as it's for content, we're okay with that. Our Legacy guys have actually been getting a lot of good experience against that, and XIX is knocking the rust off and getting their fleets out as well. But, they reinforced an important iHub and Fraternity CTA'd for it, so we can't necessarily let an important iHub die. Especially if Fraternity's going to show up.
Yeah. Now, there's a question out there that this constitutes a break in the non-invasion pack. There's a difference, by the way, between non-invasion pack, a NIP, and a non-aggression pack, a NAP. But you have a NIP, non-invasion pact with Fraternity.
Yes, for a couple more months.
For a couple more months until late March, I believe.
Yeah.
So is this breaking that on their part or your part?
Not in Teniferous. Technically not in Teniferous, although Fraternity likes to walk the fine line on breaking that NIP quite often.
Have they tried to get away with some stuff?
They bump up against the line. Let's just say that.
But you don't have any agreement with Skill U or the Scourge, do you?
No, we don't.
All right.
But, we have a good relationship with both of them. They've been pretty upfront about things since they came down here. They haven't really done anything super serious in Amincia or Teniferous, really. Like, they've done mild harassment, fucking with jump bridges and shit like that. They got one, like, inessential iHub somewhere, but other than that, nothing too
bad. Dunk, you're part of Legacy over there. Were you the one that wrote that email? Because it kind of sounded like you, actually, that called everybody to arms inside of Brave because things were going to happen?
No, that was probably Shattered Armor, our mill director, trying to rally up the troops. I've been spending most of my time logistically putting stuff in place, bridging, putting faxes where they need to be, all that kind of logistical stuff. But that was probably Shattered Armor's post that got reposted.
Oh, so you're doing salvaging and all that kind of stuff. So you?
No, I mean there's just a lot of background. I mean, the people who do logistics for all the big groups, there's a lot of sinos and iHubs and just a lot of stuff to move around and be prepared for these kind of bigger events as they're going to happen. And so I do a lot of that stuff, and then fight when it's called upon. But I think everyone's pretty motivated. People looking for some good fun, some big fights, a lot of capital action. All the groups all over EVE have been like building up their capital caches and Titan caches. It could be really interesting today.
So who do you expect to show up today?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, I stick to the back end of things and let our leaders like PGL and Shattered kind of just take care of all that planning. So who knows?
This is part of this is all part of your famous leading by example and leading quietly style of doing things, right? You take care of the busy work, other people step up and get the spotlight on them.
I don't know if it's famous. It's the way I like to play the game. I do stuff that people find boring. I like to build a lot of structures and make capital modules and fill in all the holes. That's what I like to do in the game. I still like to go out and fight. We enjoy fighting with goons. They come to catch nightly and daily, and I get to undock my capitals, and then we go slugfest capitals out a little bit every now and then. No one takes it too seriously. I enjoy all that stuff. But when it comes to the real higher order gameplay, the kind of stuff that Alpha Star, Killabee, PGL, all those guys are talking about, that's just not the gameplay I want to be in charge of. So I leave it to the people who really have the passion for it, and then be a good foot soldier when it comes time for fights.
For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, Dunk did a presentation at eVegas that talked about leadership and some of the qualities of leadership. So I was pointing out that he walks the walk as well as talks the talk. All right. But another thing that was happening in Vegas when Dunk did his presentation was the rumors that he was going to run for CSM. And that is kind of coming up. We'll talk about CSM now. There are some people who have declared they're going to run. Do you know if you're going to run yet, Dunk?
That's a very interesting question. Mrs. Dinkle over here and I have been discussing it. I haven't made a final decision yet. But it's, if I can be of help to people, it might make sense. It's just I want to do a good job, make sure I have the time in real life and Eve time to do a good job and not get disheartened with it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a political enough answer? I see
that's very good.
Is that a good political answer?
I like it. Yeah, I haven't decided. Got to talk with the family. That sounds very, very typical. And then I'll start an exploratory committee and so on. CSM member Killabee here. You guys go into the summit on the 13th?
Yeah, correct.
Let me ask you the question. Are you going to run for re-election?
No.
So you've made your contribution.
Well, you can argue about that. I think the people can have a look after the second summit, have a look at the minutes, and then decide themselves. But I don't. So personally, my opinion is I think to be really effective as a CSM, you have to be in there for multiple terms, because the first summit, you just get to know the devs. The first summit, you kind of just get to know the devs. You get to know how things work. So then for the second summit, you maybe have it figured out how to approach the devs to get shit done and how to, maneuver within the CSM. And then if you get a second term in, I think you can be really effective. But I still think there is people that are better suited for the CSM than I am, to phrase it that way.
Yeah, I noticed that I was able to do a whole lot more on my second term than my first term. It's like what Killabee said.
I do think the CSM needs a variety of people who have different skill sets and different kind of deep knowledge. Yeah, I think it really makes a difference. If you have people that really know how to balance the ships and stuff like that, but also people who understand other non-fighting aspects of the game and new player experience, all that kind of stuff, it can make a huge difference to how effective some of these people are.
So Killabee, you're definitely not running for CSM again, and it's because it would take too many years to really have the impact that you want to have, I take it?
I don't really want to go into too many details on why I'm not running again. I might make a post on Reddit after I'm done with the CSM on my experience with the CSM, and also go into my decision on why I'm not running again, but without breaking the NDA or anything, of course. Mm-hmm. But I will see how the second summit goes first.
Oh, okay, I see. So possibly undecided. Hey, Jay, I wonder why you haven't made a bid for CSM. Any ambitions?
Not really, no. the current Goon CSMs, all 7 or 8 of them. I don't know how many we have, but they're doing a good job at the minute. I don't think I could add anything. They're very active towards RFCs as well. So before the summit or anything, they'll come to us and like anything you need changing or anything like that. So and they've had the experience, like I said, it takes multiple terms to build up this relationship. And well, Arith has been there 3-4 years now, and Omelet's been there for a couple of years. So, and the judge has been there for I don't know ages. So they've all got that relationship with CCP, so they can actually get things done. So it's worth just keeping those people on, I think, instead of putting new people on.
Yeah, that's interesting. But it seems like Elo Knight is going to run. I heard that Villy is going to run. These are things they've said publicly, but I don't know if it's true. I don't know if they've actually decided to do that or if they're just playing with the.
So I'd be happy if any FCs run again as well, because the Goon CSM members, they are very good. I've met all of them obviously, and Inam and Aerith especially, both of, and Merc as well, are very much they have a very high understanding of their certain areas in EVE, and they have a very good bunch of feedback every but the CSM has been lacking FCs in it, in my opinion, which is why I ran in the first place. So I would like to see somebody like Elo or Villy step up and actually running, because it always helps to have the insight from somebody who actually is on grid fighting on a regular basis. So that's generally what I hope for the next CSM, that lots of FCs step up and try to run, maybe try to get their alliances to rally behind them. It's a different point of view.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also lots of like hyperbole involved with how these big fights go down. Like it's very easy to say like, oh, you just have to click a button and all these supers come in and kill everything. It's so unfair and bro. But someone who actually like does the organization for it and actually has to use the ships has a different insight into it.
All right. Well, we shall see. I know that Killer B has I don't know, FC first kind of point of view of the world. If I'm just putting it in plain terms.
It might have changed a bit as well in the recent months.
Okay.
I have a lot of my personal opinions and stuff have changed in the last, I would say, 6 months. We can talk about that some other time.
I think that's a really neat topic and we have a lot of FCs here, because Progod was of that thinking that it's not just FCs. You need CEOs, you need logistics people, you need diplomats. But there's definitely a breed of FCs who think like really the content creators are FCs. They're the ones that make things happen in EVE. And that was a position you had before. So your position is becoming nuanced, let's say?
Yeah, I think that I started to appreciate the people who organize stuff in the background. I still call them paper pushers internally, but it has this negative tone to it. I don't want to say that anymore publicly too much.
It has a negative tone to it is an understatement.
Yeah, so
you could change it to spreadsheet jockeys. That's much more, positive.
Well, the paper pushers have their terms for FCs. Aerith calls them jousters.
Yeah, there's this little like these things going, but I have gained a lot more appreciation for those people that do organize the stuff in the background, take care of stuff. I ran into the point mostly during the Goons coming north as well, where I basically had to do everything myself in NC Dot, and it burned me out pretty hard. And now now that I returned to EVE after roughly 4 months of break, it was actually one of my longer breaks from EVE, to be honest. A new infrastructure has sort of built up within NC. We've had a lot more people step up while I was gone, a lot of newer FCs that have just recently started running fleets again, and a lot of people that are organizing stuff. And now I came back to NC Dot in a different way. It's a way more FC friendly environment now, where I have a bunch of people I can approach and tell them, hey, can you take care of creating this thread with all the subcap doctrines in it, with all the fittings posted, so that the members have an easy, thing to look at. In the past, I had to go and create those threads myself, and it was just too much at the end of the day. And now there's a lot more people I can rely on to help me out with that kind of stuff. So I have gained a lot more appreciation for those kind of people.
Yeah, man, that's got to help. All right, so I'm getting late word that Tess, you will be forming up to defend this iHub I'm going back to this because I've got some information. in the border of Detroit and Tenerife, because you guys are on the defensive, so you have to form. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, I just want to ask you, is your intention to defend an iHub, or is there any chance that you're going to do any attacking, any surprise attacking? I guess you wouldn't tell me if you were.
No, we wouldn't break a nib.
All right, because I will stop speaking cryptically. It seems like there are rumors that you guys are mounting what looks like a defensive campaign, but you're actually going to turn that into an offensive campaign before March. And that's why I asked if you guys were going to. Well, because I think the Brave email kind of set people off that there was something afoot. And so when Test gets together and puts all their pilots on the field, anything can happen. But
I mean, Brave Newbies pings their guys how they feel they need to ping their guys. But, Test doesn't have any plans to break a nib.
Okay, has nothing to do with you guys.
I think people just trying to rally the troops, get people excited. A lot of the U.S. time zone people, the Super Bowl Sunday, trying to make something sound very exciting. So don't read too much into it. It's just Shattered, who is Canadian, I will point out. Trying to be.
What's that got to do with it?
Well, they're usually very nice and polite, and I think he's flexing his personality a little bit to be much more aggressive.
Right.
Matterall doesn't like when I talk bad about the Canadians.
I like Canadians. They're super nice. All right. Another topic that we wanted to cover was just how well Horde is attracting corporations. You've recently picked up 4 or 5 corporations from Triumvirate alone. What do you think that's about?
They also snagged a group from Pandemic Legion as well, Backcountry. Backcountry restructured, Andy stepped down, Kismeteer took over. They had like a vote. Some people left Backcountry to stay in PL, and others went into Horde.
I didn't know that. They picked up Backcountry.
Yeah. I think it's just Horde trying to expand a little bit. You see this with alliances as they kind of get into adolescence. They want to grow. They want to become more than what they were. They want to keep expanding. And it's a good opportunity for Horde because Gobbins is an incredible mind when it comes to EVE Online. And when he has an idea, it's really fun to see him implement that idea.
Yeah, I've noticed you and Jeff Rader and others have promoted Gobbins as like a strategic thinker and a brilliant tactician. And I think the comparison is always made with he's like the new Matani or the next Matani or something like that.
I wouldn't go that far, but I mean he does have a particular set of skill. If you want to borrow from a Liam Neeson thing, but he's always been, so as long as I've played EVE, Gobbins has been playing EVE. So I've got to experience the different life cycle of Gobbins. First, he was just this little spurgy Italian dude who would scream. And then he was a guy who would run bombers, and he just had a lot of success with bombers in Delve 1 and Delve 2. He used to bridge people around. He had one of the first Titans that he would bridge people around with. He was really proud of that. Then he was a campaign commander in PL, and he flamed out historically. Left PL or raged out, quit the game, did his own thing in low sec.
I remember, yeah.
He was Alliance tournament guy too, right?
Yeah, he was on y'all's 3-peat, right?
Yeah, he's a fantastic Alliance tournament Theorycrafter. He actually got kicked out of PL because he argued with Seamus over the Alliance tournament, and he called Seamus an idiot or something, and ended up winning that Alliance tournament. So Seamus just rage kicked Gobbins because, at the time, Gobbins was a different person.
Hold on a second. So Gobbins wins the Alliance tournament and then gets kicked out of PL?
Well, Seamus wins the Alliance tournament specifically, with Gobbins calling him an idiot the whole time. And then so Gobbins gets rage kicked. And that was my first Alliance tournament. So it was fun to experience that. It made me really appreciate the Alliance tournament all the much more.
So I have something interesting to add here. It appears Fraternity might not be forming for this iHub today.
Oh, okay.
So we get Fraternity pings, but of course they're in Chinese, but they have English words in them. So I read the ping yesterday, and it's a bunch of Chinese characters, but here are the English words: Legacy, Max CTA, 4060p iHub, 1900 Eve time. Those are the only English words in it. So I was like, okay, they're forming 1900 for the 4060p iHub. Nowhere else messages, he's like, dude, what are you talking about? Do you not have translators? And I'm like, I didn't think I needed one. And so I popped it into Google Translate, and here's what it actually says. Good years, if you haven't heard of it yet. The Legacy Alliance Group has a max CTA to defend the 4060p iHub. Although both offense and defense have nothing to do with us, it's very close, and I want you to remain alert after 1900 Eve time until 2300. By that time, Tenefris will have 800 more people. The year is off. Everyone is taking a good rest. So
Wait,
they
it's
may
Chinese
not.
New Year on Tuesday.
The keywords, though, look at those keywords: Legacy, Max CTA, 4060p iHub, 1900 Eve time.
Boy, test intel. Nothing like it. I will say that's a very polite ping, by the way. That's very informative and patient. And if you need a Chinese translator, I think Carneros knows Chinese.
No, we probably would have max formed anyway, but I don't think the Fraternity stuff would have gotten mentioned if we had. We have Chinese translators, but that one seems so straightforward. I was like, I don't need to ask what that means. Look at all those keywords.
I can't read and write. I can only talk.
Oh, okay. All right. So it looks like the 4060p will be less of a thing in a few hours than we thought it would. All right. But we were talking about Gobbins, and I was talking about Elise kind of promoting Gobbins, not promoting, but talking very highly of him. And it seems to have worked, because I don't know if you've noticed on the Meta Show, but every time that the Meta Show is on, they really go after Horde. And Gobbins in particular, especially Matani, who seems very visceral about his attacks on Gobbins, as if whatever needling is being done is working.
Well, Gobbins has always been a thorn in the Matani side, even when Horde was just a really small. I remember his moment of 2017. I think it was 2017.
It was 2016, and it was the narrative denied.
Yeah, exactly. So he went in the CFC, or the Imperium at the time, was going to go invade Horde and destroy them or whatever, and Gobbins just was like, oh, by the way, we knew this was coming. We changed our timers last week, so for your huge op today, none of the timers are going to work. We're actually moving over here now. See you later, Lamau. And he was just he's just been trying to do that.
He pointed out how that was all like a big book tour thing. There are a couple people who basically derailed the whole Kickstarter thing, and Gobbins is definitely one of them.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do know that the Gobbins does really enjoy ruining the narrative of other people, and having his own narrative as well. Like if he sees a phony narrative out there just lingering in the ether, he will do his best to make sure it's shown its true colors.
Yeah, I think the pokes against Gobbins are in a lot of cases just to create a villain, create a target for rallying one's troops against an individual. Whether it's warranted or not, that's a whole different thing. But I mean, I've spent a lot of time with Gobbins chatting in real life, and he plays the game at the meta level of thinking, three-dimensional chess type stuff, like several other people in the game do. There's not a lot of them out there. It's always impressive to hear the kind of thinking at that. Well, if this group is destroyed, they're going to turn their eyes, and that would mean, and just it's a whole nother level of thinking.
There's less than 10 for sure.
If you're going to do metagaming, though, there's a difference between metagaming that reduces the amount of content available to the player base, or metagaming that increases the amount of content available to the player base. And you should think about that and the consequences of it. Metagaming the fountain book means we have less content available. I would have enjoyed reading that book, and a lot of other people would have as well.
No,
nothing replaced it. Nothing. We
I'm
got
gonna have
nothing
to
for that.
say
A
that.
large portion of people
Give
that
us,
play this game
tell
play
us
this
what
game
content we could have
not to
enjoyed
read
better.
someone's opinions.
I think we all got a
Hold
shit
on,
ton
let
of
me
content
traffic
out
control
of,
here.
using
Hold
that.
on, Progod. Hold on. I just want to traffic control here. So Carneros says that this was a book that was content for people to read. It wasn't replaced by anything else. It was really just stripped down. And your answer to that, Progod?
That's pretty ridiculous.
Give us your impression of how that did not decrease our content. Or
I
anything
think
that
the entire game turning against that Kickstarter and then invading Imperium and World War B created a shit ton of content.
Oh, you think that there's a connection between that?
Yeah,
Because I thought the
I'm
casino
pretty sure there was.
started from SMA and the banking back end stuff.
World War B.
Might be wrong.
No loud noises.
It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. Look, the Kickstarter thing, and look, I clicked the button. I supported it. It would have been cool to have that book. I have nothing against any of that. When the narrative of all the EVE players started to turn against it, and there was people that wanted it, but a significant didn't, it helped that anti-goon, anti-Imperium narrative that just snowballed and gave people an incentive to kind of take it to the casino war, the war of northern attrition, the goon, World War B, whatever you want to call it. And so there is a connection there, whether people like it or not. There is a connection in people's attitudes toward groups is shaped by the narrative, the REVE, the posting, the podcast. It is shaped, and that book shaped a lot of people's opinions about goons at that time. I think have it to be today still a driving thing is kind of ridiculous. It's so far in the past.
Don't get it twisted, Carneros. I actually would have liked to have seen the book too, and I was happy to work with it, mainly because I would have been a main character. But
you're a big figure in the Fountain War that the book was going to be about.
Yeah, and assuming it wasn't complete propaganda, it would have been pretty positive too. But to sit here and say that, oh man, the EVE community didn't support our book, how terrible! People voted with their wallets.
No, that's not what I said. I said if you're metagaming to destroy content in EVE, you're doing it wrong.
And you're going to say that with a straight face as a member of the Imperium.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to that in a second, but let me bring in Alpha Star, who wanted to talk earlier. Did you have an opinion on this?
Oh, I was just going to say something about the meta show since it came up, but we kind of transitioned. But I'll just say my 2 cents that I think it's like a joke how DBRB and Mittani just dance in their little circle, trashing goblins every single time. Like there's a reason I don't go on it, and DBRB decided to call me out last night about me not coming on, and it's just like a joke because this stream is nice because everyone's just casually talking about things and calmly sharing their opinions, even right now how Carneros and PGL are disagreeing, but on the meta show is just DBRB screaming over everybody. And I went on there once and it was all about Gobbins is bad at this, Gobbins sucks at this, Gobbins is stealing your risk, Gobbins is doing that, and I'm I'm an FC, you want to ask me about fights and Horde's content, or are you going to keep asking me these weird spun up questions about goblins? So I don't know. I think if they want more people to come on their show that aren't just Imperium and Killaby, they should probably just stop shrieking about goblins every 2 seconds and try to diversify their content.
So you've noticed that it
plans to do that.
Jesus, dude! If I knew that that would get you that wound up, I'm gonna tell Boat to do that every 30 seconds every show. 30 seconds of every show, just mention goblins once, and it gets you all spun up.
That's what I was wondering. Has this affected you guys in Horde? Is it motivating you or anything?
I mean, affect us negatively? No. Affect us positively? No. Everyone's just LOL. Okay, let's go do something else instead. There's a reason. People like me. I play this game because I like to strategize and run.
Don't say you don't like to talk shit, Alpha Star. You've been feeling yourself the past 2 weeks.
Hell yeah, I enjoy my fair share of talking trash, but.
Well, then what's wrong with them talking trash? You can dish it, but you can't take it?
No, I absolutely can. But, I mean, there's one situation where you can talk trash during a fight on Discord versus trying to invite somebody on to have a discussion with them about events occurring in the game and just repeating the same things over and over again and not really centering the questions and discussion to like the person that's invited. Like, I don't know, like I'm not Gobbins' son, like asking me like 20 questions about Gobbins every time. I'm not gonna give you all of the answers.
Well, I just
But-
wonder.
I mean, it's a
I
pretty
wonder if
hostile
it's-
show, but
I wonder if it's. Yeah, listen, I think the meta show doesn't make any bones about it. I don't think they're trying to hide it. They're definitely, an Imperium show.
They're a
about
meta show.
Yeah, they
Like,
talk
it's
about-
literally the name.
yeah, it's part of the psychological warfare is baked in, and it's a good show, and you should watch it. There's a lot of information that Matani and Boat can bring out, and they usually have. So I strongly recommend watching the meta show. But know what you're getting into.
There's two levels of this meta though that we're talking about here. There's this kind of narrative, what we tell the troops, what we post, the propaganda meta level, which is a lot of what the meta show is, and a lot of shows and a lot of podcasts and a lot of posting is at that level. But there's a higher level. Like, I think I'm pretty informed about this game, but until I sat with Gobbins and he talked about SORT and GOTG and the agreement that ended that war in the North with the Imperium and Legacy and all that, and all the implications of it, it's like, holy fucking shit. It's like seeing behind the curtain some of the stuff that's going on. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a handful of players operating in that level. And when you get a chance to see what's really happening behind the scenes with some of this stuff, it's truly like impressive. And that is a very different thing than let's paint this person as the bad person so I can motivate my troops to rally and move their ships and get their jump fatigue and stuff like that. There's two levels that are going on here. Let's not confuse them. And that's what I'm saying is the meta is not just coming on podcasts and saying stuff about people.
All right, not necessarily where we wanted to go, but it is interesting to talk about because it is psychological warfare, part of warfare actually in EVE Online.
Yeah, it's a
absolutely.
huge part of EVE Online. Like the posting has always been. I've always used to joke that posting, which I mean now is terms of podcasting stuff like that, is what EVE Online is about. It's just set in some space fantasy with a spaceship side game like on the side.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when you throw everyone into the same game, which is what this single shard server does for us. It's inevitable. I love it. Like that post Muck made yesterday, just total opportunistic Reddit posting, which Muck is really good at. That's what this game is made of, man.
Let's talk about that post real quick, and then maybe.
Well,
wrap
I only
up.
got 8 minutes left, so you better.
Yeah, we have a hard stop in 8 minutes. But what were you trying to say in that post that got a lot of attention, especially from Muck Baruvian, a PL theory crafter?
Oh, it was a pretty bad idea. I do have some opinions on how I think the game should change. That would probably take more than 8 minutes to really get into, but pretty poor way of going about it, to be honest. Muck decided to respond because he has a good sense for these things and could feel the Reddit hate train and knew it'd get a lot of upvotes if he did it. And, he said his 2 cents about what should change in the game, and everyone's got some similar opinions. I think we all agree Workles need some sort of balance pass. Then he got in there and tried to say this thing about like Progod would never try something that actually works like Boosh fleets, and Boosh fleets are this unkillable fleet, which was absolutely ridiculous. And he highlighted a fight and said, and Nick killed our Keepstar because Boosh Ravens are really good, when it's just not, and Nick killed their Keepstar because they fucked up royally.
Yeah,
and
they lost that fight because they jumped in the Titans before.
Yeah, I know. I said that. I responded, and he never responded to my post that I responded with, and basically laid out in detail why that fight went that way. And
The H5 Keepstar? Which one did you use as an argument?
Yeah, Hedge 5, you pre-positioned before we
shit show
all.
on our part.
yeah, it was a terrible, terrible example. But
Yeah, but that's why posting is what it
I know,
is.
no,
It's an art
so
form, right? It doesn't matter what's true. Like he just made it seem like it was true.
exactly. That's why I said he could feel the Reddit conscious right there. He knew what would play. I like posting like that too sometimes. I post for upvotes sometimes, so I respect the play. Absolutely. Like
Sometimes
it was sad because Muck's like one of my favorite PL people. Like he's a pure theory crafter. He stays in that kind of mid-range fight game, even though he's been there for years, and he makes good posts like that. So I respected the play, and I was a big fan when it happened, although it was directed at me.
For people that don't know Muck Barovian that well, he is someone that I've crossed paths with after I got kicked out of PL the first time. He was working with a group called I forget.
Gentlemen's Club. We were both in Gentlemen's Club.
Yeah, he was like it was like Onion something.
Yeah,
but he
so
was
the
working
corp
with
was Onion,
Cryhavic. Yeah, and then I flew with him a few times. I was like, wow, this guy's really good, and I'm pretty confident in saying that he's the best. Like with no like number 2 is far and away further away from him when it comes to small and medium sized fleets. Like if you're talking between 5 and 40 people, I don't think there's a better FC in the game or in the history of the game than Muck.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
he's got 10 plus years of experience of doing literally nothing but that.
He's the best skirmish FC in the game.
That's what I would
possibly
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, he back when I was still in PL, he's like Ellie said, he's been doing it forever. And he does that mid-range kind of thing. Yeah, he does that like 40, 50, 60 man kind of thing. Sometimes even less than that. And he's very, very good at it.
Muck understands concepts too that few other EVE FCs understand. Even he put up a post last year that I think I've only ever seen 3 or 4 other FCs that like truly get it as far as how damage volley gets in before reps hit. And his post was essentially, a lot of people like to look at alpha damage, but all that really matters is how much damage gets in before the reps hit. So if you can look at rate of fire and know that you'll get 2 shots, maybe even 3 shots in, then you can look at the volley of that weapon, multiply it by 2 or 3 to figure out what your quote unquote alpha damage is. We used to call that 2-shot volley a nully, and I haven't really seen many other people notice that in the game. So him saying that out in detail, like that's what I mean when you say like a pure theory crafter, like people who are getting the actual dynamics of what's going on in a fight. There's not a lot of them, and he's one of them.
That's great. All right, cool. We'll have to get him on at some point. And Progod, we know you have to go, so if you have to sneak out, feel free to. We got one more topic we want to hit, and that is Red Alliance. What's going on there? Carneros, do you know?
Well, they made a significant financial transaction recently, and they sold period basis to Goonswarm. I don't believe they've made any official decision about what exactly they're going to do next. I don't believe Goonswarm's made any decision about what exactly they're going to do with period basis, but. I do know that a couple of corporations in Red Menace have chosen to take this moment to break off and come join the Bastion, and I've talked to them, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of like crisis of the moment, or it's a transitional moment, but no one's upset, nothing's falling apart, there's no big emo aspect to it. They're all trying to decide what exactly we're going to do next. A couple of them came over to me. We have a little Russian group, and ironically, I didn't think this would happen, but my 4 Russian corps all get along well and talk to each other, and the CEOs like each other, and that's kind of surprised me.
That's a pretty good pickup, actually. Not only period basis, which is in terms of ratting pocket or ratting areas and mining areas, it's one of the better ones in the south. But also like bolstering your Russian time zone to get above like a critical mass is pretty huge in EVE Online, especially when it comes to fighting groups that try and put out different timers to defend themselves, like really awkward timers. If you can threaten in every single timer across the board, you have a pretty massive advantage.
It's getting the Russians to work together, right? It's like they love each other or they hate each other. So it's work together. That's good.
Those hatreds run deep too. Like someone that might have been slighted 8 years ago will still carry that grudge with them, like until right now.
It's like a tattoo.
Yeah, exactly.
But they have plenty of time to figure out what they're going to do, and there's no time pressure, and everyone's amicable about it, and so we'll see what happens next.
All right. Well, thanks for getting us up to speed on that.
There was also I don't mean to jump in, but there's also a really big fight that took place in Syndicate last night, late last night, I guess early this morning, if you want to call it that. Had a bunch of initiative were involved. Snuff were involved. It seemed like a bunch of people that were just bat phoning one another, and it turns out the Snuff kind of showed up in bigger fashion and just kind of obliterated a lot of the people.
Oh, that was last night?
Yeah, it was like a TNT. We're trying to got bat phoned and we're destroying a Fortizar that some small syndicate group put up, and the syndicate groups were like, "Hey, yo, Snuff, you want to come help us out here?" And so that all kind of dovetailed horribly badly for the TNT side. But it's not so bad. But you're talking like 30 or 40 dreads that died from TNT and initiative.
NSH Alliance executive jumped in a jump freighter thinking it was a dread.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's the one. He jumped a jump freighter into a bunch of dreads.
Yeah, he. I guess they were. So Snuff jumped in some carriers to kill subcaps, and they were gonna obviously drop dreads on the carriers. And I was on the Snuff comms, and all I heard was, "Oh, there's a jump freighter here." I was like, "What?" So it turns out afterwards, the dude had undocked, didn't realize he was in a jump freighter, thinking it was a dread or whatever, and just jumped to the Sino.
The little jump freighter that could.
Yeah.
It didn't survive, did it?
Oh no, I killed it.
You killed it. Snuff was also in the news in that they went ahead and killed some part of Test, right? They killed a Titan, I think, and a supercarrier.
Yeah.
Oh, they tried to
doing a move up. They're doing a move up, I think. I don't know if they're moving more north or less south or. But,
they had they had parts of the armor super, or like they had their armor supers and Titans. They're starting to build up an armor fleet as well because they want to go to Goonway and have both. And they had that, which what they already had ready. They deployed that north, and they were moving it back south, and they got caught by Snuff.
It could have been a lot worse though, because Vili was smart about his move. So he jumped in 2 Titans and then told them to tether, and he wouldn't jump anything else until those 2 had tethered. So at most, you would only ever kill 2 Titans, right? If you do it that.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it could have been worse if he'd just told everyone to jump. But I think one of the Titans got tethered anyway, so that was safe. And then I think just randomly some test nicks jumped in and launched his fighters and got tackled that.
Yeah, I was kind of confused about that because for a big enough gang in a position that High was in, it would make sense for him to sort of stab on that relationship a bit. Yeah, but only for 1 Titan, 1 Super, it didn't really seem worth it. But that's his call, I guess. He was on the Meta show yesterday, I think, so maybe he talked about that there.
He didn't. I don't think he said why. It's just that, hey, we were under no obligation. We're not allies. We were just helping you out, and there was some miscommunication between Progod and Vili on what that actually meant, or something like that. But I really like the point that you raised, Jay, that and this is how careful Vili is, and really how experienced he is to only let a few jump at a time, so there'll never be a big prize if they get ambushed.
Well, if you've got critical mass, right, and you've got, if it was like their shield fleet, they could have jumped them all in, that'd be fine, because, you drop on it, it's going to be a formed fleet that's, it has critical mass of faxes and damage Titans and supers or whatever they can deal with, Snuff's escalation. But just like, I think they had like 7 or 8 armor Titans, and that's a gank, right? That's not like a fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a proper fleet would be able to defend itself. You don't worry about jumping everything in at once. But when you're doing a move fleet with a susceptible amount, you don't want to get those in danger. So you let them go a few at a time. I really like that. I hadn't heard that before.
And as much praise as I give Gobbins, I think Vili is also a hugely responsible for the success not only of Tappy but of Legacy Coalition. Like his move to test from Goons was huge in terms of the effect that it had. Like I don't think World War B happens the same way it does if Vili is not in test. And I don't think Test is at the center of a coalition in the South if Vili is not there. He kind of balances out any kind of mistakes or gaffes that Test would make.
Progod is more gung-ho about things, and Vili is a little bit more reserved.
Yeah, exactly. He's the thinking man, and it's exactly the trait you need for running an alliance, right? Or even a coalition. So I think he's one of, probably in the last 5 years, probably the most influential, or at least close with Gobbins, as the most influential coalition/alliance leader.
Yeah, and Test did win our most influential for 2018. That was a very hot year for big battles, but they really did they did a diversity of things that was interesting. And also now you're seeing the benefits of that with the groups that they're attracting to Test as well. There seems to be some payoff for creating a stable environment that has a multitude of things to do. Okay, we will leave it there because we are out of time, but it was really nice to have all you guys here. So I want to say thanks to Progod, who took off because he had to leave a little bit early. Today is Super Bowl Sunday, so I'm sure he's got a lot to do. We should have made fun of New Orleans before he left. What a mistake. I want to say thanks to Killaby, Alpha Star Pilot from Horde, Dunk Dinkle from Brave, Elise Randolph. Actually, you're not a guest. I have to skip you. And Jay Amazingness from Goons. Thank you guys for being guests today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Carneros, Elise, we're going to see you next Sunday, right?
Yes, sir.
You guys are regulars. Great. I want to say thanks to everybody that showed up. Wow, we had a bunch of subscriptions and follows, and I just want to thank the crowd for contributing to those. You can also help Talking in Stations through a Patreon. That is really helping us tremendously. I also want to say thanks to McLeod for putting the show together. And as always, he's always here and he's always doing the show. So if you see McLeod out there, thank him for Talking in Stations. He's quite frankly half the show. And as for podcasts, a little applause. As for podcasts, we have some exciting stuff happening. And we're not ready to make announcements, but we're picking up new crew members and new opportunities to create more content for a variety of game styles in EVE Online, all with the intent of having people improve their gameplay. So thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week on Talking in Stations.